planning preview for the month of March. My name is Karla, and I'm here to go over the agenda for Planning Commission. First, we've got an assortment of residential zoning districts going to just one low-density apartment district. Located at the corner of North 26th Street and west of 6 Mile Road, this rezone is moving from several residential zoning districts to one low-density apartment district. The applicant is Signature Companies, and this will allow them to construct a low-density apartment complex with up to 24 units per building. The next one is located at 69th and Sycamore. The request is to go from a residential live-work zoning classification that allows for an assortment of different types of development to what's called the conservation, to allow to have this area as a drainage way for the neighborhood for private development. And then a similar request, however, this one is at 57th and Veterans Parkway, the same applicant of Empire Companies, and the request is again to go from what's called the live-work zoning classification to conservation, to allow for this area to be identified as a drainage area for the private development. Moving on to the next part of the agenda, we've got 2 conditional use permits for billboards over 288 square feet. The first is at 2000 North Career Avenue. The request comes from the applicant, Book Your Billboard, and the owner of the property is the Sioux Falls School District. This will allow them to exceed that threshold, and the conditional use permit will allow them to go up to 672 square feet. And moving on to the last application for the month, a similar request of exceeding the 288 square foot threshold, and it is located at 4301 West 12th Street. This request is to go to 448 square feet for a billboard, and the applicant is Stein Sign Company. Those are the agenda items for the March 5th Planning Commission meeting. Stay tuned, and I'll be joined by Jeff to go over the Planning Commission annual report.
Hey, this is Seth with the City of Sioux Falls Housing Division. I'm here today with another Home Maintenance Minute for you. Just wanted to talk to you a little bit about your driveway in the winter. It is a city ordinance that you have to remove the snow within 48 hours of each snow event. And so in order to get that snow and ice off of your sidewalks, off of your driveways for yourself, a lot of people like to use salt. And I myself have used salt, and it works really great. However, as you can see with this driveway, this in particular homeowner used some really aggressive salts, and so it actually ate through the top layer of their driveway, and it's all pitted, and there's sand everywhere, and this concrete isn't going to last as long as it should. The Housing Division wants you to know that clearing your driveway and sidewalk helps avoid safety issues for individuals in wheelchairs, neighbors passing by, and delivery drivers, or anyone else who needs a safe path. Clearing ice and snow can avoid damage to your sidewalk, such as water infiltration into cracks and joints, specifically during the thaw-freeze portion of winter. There are multiple products and methods for clearing snow and ice from driveways and sidewalks during the winter months. We encourage you to do your own research and understand the consequences of the products that you are using. Lastly, we want to thank you for taking care of your investment and continuing to keep Sioux Falls the safe neighborly community we enjoy. Thank you for watching today's Home Maintenance Minute.
Welcome back, Sioux Falls. I'm Karla here with Jeff Schmitt, and he recently looked at the annual report for the Planning Commission, and he's going to tell us about all the things that he learned while doing it.
Thanks for having me today.
You bet.
Yeah.
Tell us what this annual report means for us, if you could, and how you came about editing the numbers and what that means in my forecast.
Sure. It's really nice to have that historical data. You know, doing an annual report, whether it's Planning Commission or any of the other boards or commissions, giving that information back to the commissioners gives them a nice snapshot of what they've done, but also as time goes by, you can go, well, are we doing more, or are we doing less?
Okay.
So that's really why I do it every year, and it gets done kind of this first quarter of each year.
Okay.
Yeah. So
what's the process of gathering all the data and making this look like a beautiful graphic that we can all understand?
Good question. What you have to do is you kind of have to, throughout the year, look at each one of the minutes.
Okay.
So I look at the minutes from each month. You can wait till the end of the year and go, I'm going to do all 12 at the same time, but I take in each month's minutes from the Planning Commission. So when they're completed, after about that 6-week time period, I'll go and take in the minutes from there and find out how many actions there were on the agenda, or there were a conditional use, or if there was a rezoning, a preliminary plan, and I start to tabulate those. And I also start to look at how many go through to city council or go on to a county meeting, which would be a joint meeting, and start to tabulate them. If there's approvals, if there's any denials, if there's any appeals, those types of things. But just start tabulating them so I don't have so much work at the end of the year.
Smart.
Yeah.
So the Planning Commission doesn't make the decision for these hearings?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
They make a recommendation. So the Planning Commission hears the item that gets brought forward by an applicant, and then they can approve or deny, or basically then at that point they're sending it forward to the City Council.
Okay.
Some items do have a final hearing at a Planning Commission, like a conditional use.
Okay.
But in general, if there's an ordinance aspect like a rezoning, those items all have to go to City Council with the recommendation from a Planning Commission member.
So then residents would get another chance to voice their opinion about the subject?
That's
or
correct, right.
Just Planning Commission?
The citizens always have that opportunity.
Okay.
So the
That's
citizens would have the opportunity, again, just like what we like to do with planning preview when we've done this, is give that citizen aspect of transparency, letting them know this is your opportunity to come to a public hearing and hear about these items.
And how do they know that this is going to be in their neighborhood? Or
Sure.
how can they get involved?
The real aspect of it through state law says it just has to be posted in a legal notice.
Okay.
And that's really challenging because the legal notice is just in that document of record, and people may not understand this, but it's a newspaper. And so we've gone through that even last couple of years where what is the legal notice, what is the newspaper of record, but it gets noticed in the newspaper. The city of Sioux Falls has gone above and beyond that. We've said we're going to make it even better for the citizens of Sioux Falls and for stakeholders, and we're going to post signs, and we're going to post signs on the properties.
Got it.
And so that's not required by state law, but we post signs at the properties. And then for certain items that go to the agenda, we also notify property owners within a certain location. So not everybody gets notified within, 5 miles, but within, 600 feet or within, 1,300 feet, we'll notify property owners of that information.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And such a good way to remain transparent between residents and the development in their neighborhood. So I did take a look at the document, and I've got lots of questions here for you. And then my first would just be, help me understand preliminary plans and what that might forecast for 2025.
Sure. Again, that's a great place to start. When we renamed that back in 2008, 2009, again, 20 years ago, the preliminary plan is what it states. It's a preliminary plan. And so citizens need to start to understand that, and that's why we named it. This isn't what's going to be constructed.
Okay.
That's construction plans.
Right.
This is the preliminary plan where an applicant developer comes in and says, I think I'm going to do it this way. I'm going to preliminarily say, I may have some lots here, the streets may lay out this way, but we don't hold them to it.
Okay.
It's preliminary. So they show it to us at Planning Commission, so any of the property owners around that area, if they're interested, could go, so what may happen near us? And so they lay it out preliminarily, and then they still have to come back and do a developer's plan, a final plan, and construction plans before they can construct it.
Okay.
But preliminary plans come to Planning Commission and to City Council and give us at least a cursory preliminary aspect of how do they want to lay out their development. Where do they think their single family is going to go? Where are the apartments going to go? Give us a big picture of what it's going to look like.
Did we see a lot of preliminary plans last year, or what?
Good question, really good question. You know, on average, we see between 10 or 12 preliminary plans. You know, and preliminary plans are large. You probably see 300 to 500 acres.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And last year, I think we saw 3. We might have saw 2 preliminary plans, so they're really down, which doesn't mean a lot. But by doing an annual report, that starts to show, well, next year are we going to be up to 12, or are we down to 2 or 3 again? What's that trend show you?
Sure.
And seeing 2 to 3 this year, my hair started going up back my neck going, so what does this mean? I mean, I'm not in the development business, I'm not an economist, but if I start seeing it go down, that means there's not going to be a lot of development on the future coming in, because they already have stuff to be constructed and they don't have to bring more stuff onto the market.
So is that where people say like the ebb and flow of development? So what's being constructed or what's been permitting is already been worked on, and then
absolutely
what we're moving to?
That's correct. Yes,
is
because
the
it's
preliminary
already
plan.
yes,
Okay, got it.
Yep, and we do a lot off the preliminary plan. That's what we tell people. Look, this is already there. It's existing. You know, so that we can give people that indication. Yeah.
So good forecasts of 2025, and then.
And 2026 is what's currently done that preliminary plan. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
So then, besides all these plans that the Planning Commission reviews, what else is the involvement in the landscape or the development process of the Planning Commission?
Rezonings.
Okay.
And preliminary plans and rezonings go hand in hand. We call them rezonings. Some people call them change of zones.
Okay.
So the most traditional ones people see is a property owner, let's say a farmer, but it's usually a developer. We use those words interchangeably. That property owner will say, I have this piece of farmland, this ag property, and I'm going to bring in a preliminary plan and show you that I'd like to change it from ag to change it. And they want to change that zoning. And they'll say, here's where my single family is going to go, and that changes to RS. This is my apartments, it's going to be RA. And then I might have some commercial C zoning. And so they start to change their zoning. But we also ask them, well, let's see their preliminary plan to see how they're going to lay that out.
So I can see that with any vacant piece of land, like in my backyard? Or is it only for certain areas of town?
Just about all properties that they come in,
Interesting.
because again, they have to show that when they start to come in, because otherwise they can't move on to that next stage. And there's no real reason for anybody to come into the city of Sioux Falls unless they want to start to develop it.
Cool, it's good to know. I didn't know I had all those resources.
That's right. And anytime they can call us or email us, or we prefer stopping in, because that face-to-face I think is really good.
I agree.
Yeah.
So you've done lots of Planning Commission annual reports, I assume, in your tenure with the city. What did you find most jarring about these numbers?
You know, I don't know if it's most jarring, but it is a good verb to kind of use. Things are going down.
Okay.
You know, numbers are going down. When we look at it, and we make this available on the website too, so the citizens can look at it, but it's kind of wonky, it's data driven. But all of our numbers are down. We just talked about preliminary plans, and they're down. The number of items that have gone to Planning Commission, you know, how many go just in general, how many conditional uses, rezoning, preliminary, they're down. We're not seeing as many as we used to. Is that alarming? Is that jarring? No, but it's an indication of things to come, maybe, you know? So that's one of those things where, like, why I do it and why I like to see the information. You know, is it just a down slope and it's going to start going back up? Well, let's see what happens over the next couple of years.
That's kind of how I see those graphs come, ebb and flow, like I said
and why
previously.
we put them on graphs there, so people can see them. Well, look, I kind of see it over the last 10 years it's gone like this. Or is it always just straight down? Yeah.
So then the last part, we go into the joint areas, and I guess I just didn't really understand the concept behind that. Like, if they're in the county, why don't they just stay in the county? Or if they're in our city limits, why don't they just become part of the city? Or why do we even have these joint planning commission areas?
And it's a weird word, but I think once people hear it, they can understand it. It's joint because we do it jointly. Okay. The stuff in the city handles. The stuff in the county happens and takes care of. But what about that area that's in between? So you could call it the in-between meetings, but we're like, it's really the joint meetings that we sit together and handle things. So currently it's county property, it's in the county, but it's gonna be the city. So we have a boundary that the city of Sioux Falls is gonna grow into, and so we know it's gonna be in the city at some point. So there's certain things that it shouldn't maybe develop into more county development, but the county's like, yeah, but it's really not ready to be city type development yet, so what could it be? And so those two bodies sit together jointly and try to go, well, what should the preliminary or interim or, you know, what should the phasing be to handle something jointly?
Interesting.
Yeah.
So what does it mean to grow into an area? Does
Sure.
that mean you just become a part of that city
Yeah.
and then your address changes?
It's a lot of different steps. You
Okay.
know, we look at how much the city needs to grow over the next 25, 50, 100 years. And right now we're looking at the next 25 years.
Okay.
From 2025 to 2050. And we know how much land we need for all the things we've talked about, single family land, housing, that type of stuff. So we know how much land we need. And then people annex their land, like we talked about. If they annex their land into the city limits and it's farmland or ag, that's what we're growing into. And the whole premise is, from the planning office, what you and I do is we want to make sure we have enough public infrastructure for private investment.
Right.
And I think when people start to hear that, understand that that's what government should really do. We don't restrict, we don't regulate, we're just like, we want to make sure we're ready for, you know, should we have enough public infrastructure for the private investment? What you don't want to do is when private investment comes in and goes, okay, we're ready to do something, we're like, oh yeah, we didn't even think about that.
Okay.
Well, aren't you planning? Absolutely, we are planning. Well, then plan for the public infrastructure to be there. And so should we grow into those areas? That's what we do.
So infrastructure like roads, water,
And
sewer. Oh,
storm
okay.
drainage, and storm drainage is basically if it rains a lot or snow melts, storm drainage. And then you get down to, well, what about schools? What about parks? What about fire stations? What about all that type of infrastructure?
So you're looking at all this stuff and trying
for
to
the
make
next
sense of it.
25 years.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, one last question while I got you here is the conditional use permit. Why do we do those, and why is it based off of just separation and not uses?
Sure. And conditional uses are such as what we just said. They're conditioned on. And a lot of things are you're allowed to do. And you
Okay.
come in and you zone property, and you can just build a single family house. And then there's some things that you may have a right to do, but not necessarily without someone having the authority to put some conditions upon. So we used to have, 20 years ago, a lot of these things that people had input on. But now the conditions have really been toned down or tapped down because everybody has a property right. Even the people that live in single family homes are like, wait, I don't want someone to tell me what to do with my property. So we've toned down those conditions and just said, look, here's what you absolutely get to do. Here's what maybe somebody should tell you what you get to do and what you don't get to do. You know, and a lot of things that I think that people understand when I tell them about, look, if you want to build a house, I shouldn't tell you how many bedrooms or bathrooms you have. And they're like,
Right.
absolutely. I'm like, right. But there may be a commercial development that gets built on a busy street that we get to say, hey, maybe that more intense use, that liquor store or that adult use maybe shouldn't be close to this or that. And they're like, right, but it still could go somewhere else. That's a conditional use. And it really gets complicated quick. But again, when people call us, when they stop in and they talk to us, we're like, we're going to allow it, but you can put some conditions on it. And then how do you regulate those conditions?
And then that would be done through the conditional use
And
permit.
that'd be done through the conditional use permit and have a public hearing with the applicant, with planning staff, and with stakeholders like the citizens in the area be able to come and hear and go, how about we talk about it?
So another way to get folks involved in what's going on in their neighborhood.
Yeah.
I like
and
that.
we do probably 30 of those
Yeah.
a year.
Yeah, I saw there were a few of those in the annual report,
Correct.
so it was interesting to see the outcome of those.
Yep.
Well, that's really all I had for you today.
Okay,
Thanks
yeah.
for joining.
Thank you very much for having us and getting that information out.
Yes. Thanks for joining us, Sioux Falls. Our next Planning Commission meeting is on Wednesday, March 5th at 6 p.m. at Carnegie Town Hall.